Hello there, I'm Oscar.
Hi there, I'm Nathan.
And we're here with the Mendip Hills AONB.
We're volunteer rangers for the Mendip Hills, and we've had the great privilege of coming and making a set of films about the wonderful and iconic species that we have here on the Mendips.
So we hope you enjoy them. So Nathan, it's a beautiful day here out on the Mendip Hills and we're not allowed to say where exactly we are. Why is that?
Well, today we are having a look at a particular species that is really important on the Mendips, and the Mendips is a great stronghold for this particular species, and that is the common, not so common, European adder. So we're here at a site that is of critical importance to the adders on the Mendip Hills, one of their strongholds populations here in the UK, and because it is so important to the adders, we're not going to say exactly where it is that we're at. Lots of the people who are watching this who may be local would probably know where we are. It is a famous spot on the Mendips, but we're not really going to advertise it too much about where we are today, simply because the adders that are here because they are hibernating in this area, and so we need to make sure that they are protected, and so that place that they stay, a place called the hibernaculum, is protected, and that they're not disturbed too much. And today we're not just here to make a film, we're actually conducting an adder survey to look at the number of adders that are here, and to help try and keep an eye on the local population.
So should we start having a look?
Yeah, let's go and
see if we
have a
can
look
find
around.
some. All right. So we set off on our adder survey. I'm thrilled to be part of this project with Nathan. I think ever since I was a little boy I had a fascination with the adder. My hope is to get close enough to an adder to film it, really capture their character on film. And sure enough, after half an hour or so, I spot my first adder tail disappearing into the thicket. It's not exactly David Attenborough stuff yet, but I'm over the moon. Well, one of the things I didn't realise when we started looking for these adders is just how sensitive they are. Every little crack of a twig or heavy footfall seems to alert adders that I haven't even seen yet to make a run for it. The day is getting warmer and warmer, and we begin to see more and more adders. With the help of Nathan's keen eyes, it's not long before we find our first up-close encounter. Okay, so we have actually just found something.
Yeah, we found an adder down in the scrub down in here, so we're just going to have a look down. She's down in here.
Our first up-close sighting, and it's beautiful. It felt incredible to be sharing this place with this special animal. Nathan tells me that due to its smaller size, it's likely to be a male, and the movements of this adder just seem so relaxed. It was just calmly flicking its tongue out and tasting the air, probably trying to get a sense of what we were, watching us with those fantastic red eyes. A really good start to our survey. So Nathan, we're here doing an adder survey for R.A.G.S, aren't we?
We are. So R.A.G.S is the Reptile and Amphibian group Somerset. They have asked for volunteers to come and engage in active surveys to look at the adder populations, and luckily I've been given this patch, which is an adder hotspot, so I'm really pleased about that. So how do we go about doing a survey? Well, it's actually quite simple. It's about moving through the landscape slowly and quietly, looking for the snakes, and the snakes are in particular places because we're here early in the year. This is April, and at this point in the year the snakes have only just come out of their hibernaculum and they're just preparing to move out into the wider landscape to hunt. And at the moment, what they're doing is that they're basking in the really warm spots. So what we have to do is move through all of this undergrowth, through the gorse and the heather and the long grass tussocks, just looking at those nice warm spots where they're nice and sheltered, maybe a bit of bare earth that they can settle on as well, at the entrance quite often to little tunnels and burrows so they can get away from predators quickly, and see if we can spot them while they're there basking.
So I've just spotted an adder on the ground in front of me, and if you take a look, you can see we've got this beautiful sheltered sunny patch here, and then I don't know if you can see, but just down in the corner here we've got a hole just there, and that goes all the way underground, and the snake actually disappeared down into that hole. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to wait here really quietly with my camera, and my bet is when he's calmed down a bit, in 5 or 10 minutes, he's going to come back out to this sunny sheltered spot and we should be able to catch him. Nathan politely advised me against trying to wait out a creature that can go months between meals. And maybe he was right, but I wasn't to be discouraged, and 15 minutes later, my patience paid off.
Adders are ectothermic, and so they actually absorb the sun, their body heat from the sun, and directly from the sun. Some reptiles are able to absorb it from their habitat, so grass snakes and slow worms, for example, absorb heat from the ground after it's been warmed up by the sun, whereas adders actually directly bask in the sun.
And when they're basking, they sort of flatten their body to get as much of that surface area visible to the sun.
They do. So they try and point all of the darkest bits of their skin towards the sun to help their muscles warm up, and to gain the energy that they need to then go off and hunt for food. They're also here because in the congregations of all these males and females that all share a hibernaculum, there is of course also mating behaviour. So the females will be mating with the males, and they'll be basically preparing to give birth later on in the year. So some of the snakes that we might see here today are going to be quite dramatic in their colours because they're in their mating colours as well.
One of the things that really amazed me while we were out on the survey was the really quite startling range of colours we saw, from very dark, almost black examples, right the way up through to an almost fluorescent sort of green. I hope to catch a glimpse of the mating behaviours and possibly see males and females together, and Nathan said he knew where we might find a larger concentration of individuals: the hibernaculum.
So just over the hill here we've got a hibernaculum, and that's where the adders stay for their winter. We won't actually be able to see the hibernaculum because it's deep underground, but what we will see is an increase in the number of snakes because they haven't yet travelled far from where they've been hibernating.
So what's special about the behaviour in and around the hibernaculum?
So there's lots of snakes in the hibernaculum, which is quite a strange thing anyway, because we don't really think of snakes as being communal creatures particularly, but most definitely over the winter they are, and it's a very specific place, and this is why areas like this are so important, is the fact that these hibernaculums might actually contain a whole population of snakes concentrated into one small place, and it's a very specific place because they need some very specific requirements. So snakes don't really hibernate as such, not like bears who just go to sleep for 3 months. These are creatures that go into a process that's called torpor, and torpor basically means is that they are shut down to such an extent that they're using very, very small amount of energy, but they're still aware enough that they can move about as if the requirement is for them to do so. So one of the reasons that they might move around is that it gets warmer, and so the hibernaculum is actually over lots of levels. So the coldest parts of the winter, the snakes will move right down deep to maintain that temperature, and then as it gets warmer they'll come back up towards the surface, and then if it gets cold again they'll go a little bit deeper again. And so the hibernaculum has to have this very deep stratified effect, so the snakes can move up and down through that depending on what their needs are.
Okay, so should we go and have a look at it?
Yeah, let's go and have a look.
Adders they give birth to live snakes essentially, don't they?
Essentially, yes. It's all reptiles lay an egg, but one of the reasons why the adder is found so far north, it's the most northerly found species of snakes.
Inside the Arctic Circle they've been found, haven't they?
Yes, they have. So they can deal with quite harsh conditions. One of the adaptations that they have to help them deal with those conditions is the fact that they don't lay eggs in a nest. The eggs are laid and then the female keeps them inside herself, and then they hatch inside her and she gives birth to a live young. But she's still laid an egg, it's just that she stores it inside her body before their live young come out. And she can have anywhere from 2 to up to 20 young, depending on her size and where she is in her reproductive cycle.
Fantastic. And then something really amazing happened. I was filming a very calm female who was just basking in a small clear area under some bracken. You can see she's a female by her relatively large size and her slightly duller brown colours. And as I was sat there just watching her, a smaller, more vividly coloured male just poked his head out of the bracken and then made his move and coiled his body around her. And this was really just incredible to be able to witness this behaviour. It's actually quite a possessive behaviour. The male is basically sending a message to the other males that might happen upon them. She's mine, clear off. And it's amazing to think that this adder here is going to lay the eggs that will hatch and spread out across the Mendips and contribute to the genetic diversity of the snakes in the area. So I was really amazed to be able to see this happen in the hibernaculum area, and it was at this point that I very slowly stood up and just left them to it, so that I didn't disturb this really critical time in the life cycle of the adder. Well, me and Nathan have moved to a different part of the Mendips now, and we're just having a look on this slope to see whether we've got any adders here. And we haven't seen any adders yet, but one of the things that we are disturbing quite frequently as we're walking is the common brown lizard, and we know that adders will feed on the lizard. So this area is filled with adder prey, and I think it's only a matter of time before we see an adder on this new slope. So we're going to keep on looking, and we'll see if we can get any. So why are we looking here then, Nathan? Why is this habitat perfect for adder?
So the adder needs lots of different types of habitat during the cycles of its life each year. The habitat that we've got here is perfect. It's very mixed. It has this tussocky grass, it's got the gorse, it's got these pockets and dells that are really good shelter for it. And one of the things that has been highlighted as an important cover species for adder is bracken. And there's bracken, and if you look at the pattern of the bracken leaves, and then you look at the pattern of camouflage on an adder, they're strikingly similar, and so there's a high likelihood that the presence of bracken is quite an important one for adders, simply because it provides them with great camouflage protection.
As the day warmed up, the adders warmed up too, and we saw this noticeable change in their behaviours, from quite docile basking behaviours that we'd seen earlier in the morning to a lot more linear travel. Some of the adders we encountered later in the day were really moving surprisingly fast and going long distances, and this was probably influenced by mating behaviours and seeking female adders. Towards the end of our survey, we encountered this adder crossing the path right in front of us, and it gave us a really good opportunity to see how they move across open ground. But this is quite a vulnerable position for a snake to be in, and they're at risk of attack from birds. Pheasants in particular will predate adders in all stages of their life. This is particularly important because 50 million pheasants are released into our countryside every year, so this is one of the threats they face within their habitat that is primarily caused by humans. It was quite amazing to see how effortlessly this adder was able to find a way up this quite featureless rock face. They're adept at finding those crevices in the rock, and that's in part why the landscape of the Mendips, with its limestone outcrops, is a really perfect habitat for them. So Nathan, one of the features of the Mendip Hills is the dry stone walls that crisscross the top of the Mendip Hills plateau. But we're talking about adders today. Why are dry stone walls important for the adder populations around here?
Well, as you can see, they're a really loose structure, and of course an adder is a snake and so can move through this loose structure quite well. And so actually these are like snake highways, if you like. They can move through the landscape using this wonderful 3D architecture to be able to protect themselves from predation. So there are predators that will eat a snake, unsurprisingly. So herons eat snakes, buzzards, foxes, dogs, they all will eat a snake. So these walls provide that safety and security to the animals, and also, as you mentioned, they are interconnecting. So one of the things that is really important in wildlife, and we're really beginning to understand it more, is about the interconnectivity of the sites. It's no good having a site that is important for a particular animal over here and then another site for that animal over here if they can't come together and meet, because those genetic populations are separated too much. And so these are the ways that our adders are able to move around our landscape. We've got a little bit of an extra on our talk really, and our walk around looking at adders. As we've come back from the site, we found this adder that's actually been hit by a car. It was crushed, so we've taken this opportunity really to pick up a dead adder and really get it so everybody can see them much closer while they're still, because of course that's the trouble with trying to find wildlife, is it keeps on moving around. So now we've got an adder here. So they are, of course, the UK's only venomous species of snake. So inside that mouth there would be fangs to deliver venom. This one I'm pretty sure is a male. It's quite small, the females are much larger than this. And I'll roll him over so we can see the belly plates as well, so you can see the difference between the scales on the belly and the scales on the back.
They're much smoother, aren't they?
Yeah, so these ridged plates are how the snake propels itself along. So each of those, it can, as the muscles move down its body, that grips onto the floor. And of course we can really see that pattern on the snake that we were talking about, which is similar to bracken. So you can see that those triangles are very similar to the shape of a bracken leaf. So it's a tragedy to find such a beautiful creature run over, but it is the state of things, unfortunately. Us and our cars do kill an awful lot of wildlife, but it has given us the opportunity to have a little bit of a closer look at an adder, which we wouldn't really have a chance to do.
So what are we going to do with it now?
So this snake will now be frozen, and it will be given to a paleontologist actually, who is doing a study at a cave in Ebba, and she'll basically use the bones and skeleton of this snake to help her do comparisons and tests for the snake bones that she finds in the cave that she's looking at.
So she's going to compare the bones of this modern snake with ancient snake fossils and bones.
Yes.
And plot that genetic change that's happened to the adder over thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah, it gives us a chance to do some focused research as well. So we'll take advantage of this tragedy.
So we finished our ADA survey and we're back here at the AONB office. And we had a really successful day.
Yeah, we had a really good day. That's 14 or 15 sightings, photographs, and records for the Reptile Amphibian group Somerset. So that's a really successful day, and we've got to see a really interesting species of creature.
We're really pleased that you could join us for that trip, and we look forward to seeing you again. So goodbye.
See you with the next film.
Bye.
Bye bye.